Hey guys, Ben Painter here, and today we're back once again for another video, and this time we are at Whilton Mill Kart Circuit for round 9 and the penultimate round of the Club73 Weekend Series. Now obviously I haven't been able to film a little vlog for a little while just due to the fact we've been going to tracks that don't allow headcams, so I actually have almost forgotten to film this intro. Really excited for this one. We are in fact racing in the rain in the A final for this one. We're starting in 11th place I believe on a grid of 20 drivers, so we're just inside the second half of the pack, so we're going to jump out on track today and see how we get on. Now before we get into the video, if you do enjoy this one, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. But without further ado, we're going to jump straight into the footage and see how we get on in the race today.
So as we get into the kart, ready for our practice session, we have a wave from Amelia and a good luck dap from Arthur, and we get out on the track thinking what could possibly happen in this event. Obviously brand new karts, we've never been to this track before, it's damp and wet, so we're just going to go around and see what we can do in practice and just see how we can get on in this one. Now I am going to show you guys a little bit of practice in this one, as it was quite eventful. So coming around on the first lap here, we've got Sean Russell up ahead of us, and unfortunately we take an absolute shotgun bullet from behind from Matthew Hill, who puts us round in the practice session. I was sort of sat here a bit confused, but I decided to wait for everyone to go past safely before we then followed along behind them with a cheeky 180 and got back on our way. This wasn't the only bit of action going on. We've got Adam Sheargold, who has spun round into Christmas Corner as well, and we've also got Reggie Mosley having the slowest spin out I've ever seen. Following on from this, we also have Joe, who spun out, and I decided to join him a couple of corners later as well. Coming into the last couple of corners, the kart just completely gave way and we ended up going around on our own as well. So lots of action in the practice session, not too many clean laps. As you can see, everyone was sort of having a bit of fun pirouetting around, but despite this we did come along to the end of the practice session with the 11th fastest time, which was quite fitting as we were starting in 11th position. So with this in mind, I'm going to jump straight into the race here, and after a little bit of a wait from guys swapping their karts over, we got underway. We got off to a bit of a sluggish start here, dropping down to 12th position straight away, and everyone, to my surprise, took a very narrow line into the first corner. Now bear in mind it was very wet, it had been raining all day. We decided to go around the outside, and as you can see, we managed to collect a whole heap of positions, moving from 12th place to 8th place in the first chicane. Once again, we then take the inside line to try and get a bit of a better rotation in the wet areas of the track to get past Dan Webber. So now we're up into 7th place. Really happy with this, as we've gained 5 positions so far in the first lap. We then got Toby McAllister Brown up ahead of us, going on to the drier sections of the track there to try and brake and get the kart slowed down before taking the wet line and getting a better run out of the corner, which then leads us up into P6. So a great start so far. Once again, we then take the outside sort of non-conventional wet line, as this was where a little bit more grip was, and up ahead we then have Sean Russell completely killing Harrison Kirkham, which gives us another position up into 5th, and then we get a better run than Sean and manage to make our way up into 4th place as well. So off the start in the first lap, we've gone from 12th place all the way up to 4th, which in my mind we were literally on dreamland at this point. Really happy with this, and now we were just going to try and hold our momentum, try and catch up with the guys who are up ahead and see what we could do. Now coming down the start finish straight here, you can see as we look over our shoulder, all sorts of carnage is unfolding. Drivers are sort of facing backwards coming out of the last corner, and instead here once again you can see how much steering lock I'm having to apply through each corners just to try and get the kart rotated, slowed down enough to then get through each of the corners. So we're going to ride on board here for the next couple of laps as we do try and catch up with the guys who are up ahead of us. Now once again, I'm going more to the middle of the track to brake in this occasion with the conditions of the track, just because the kart managed to slow down a little bit better than using the conventional braking line. So we're actually gaining on the guys up ahead of us in the braking zones quite heavily. You can see here once again we've got Oliver Wedden up ahead of us, who's using the conventional sort of racing lines, and in the braking zone we're just able to close that gap more and more through each of the corners. So once again, coming into the second half of the lap here, once again trying to take a bit of a wet line to get a better run out of the corner, but unfortunately I think this is one of the corners we were struggling with all day, as the kart was just washing out wide. Again, same into this corner, just really using the edges of the track where all of the rubber from the tyres has sort of dissipated too, so we can have a little bit more grip going into each of the corners. Once again, trying to use all the track here, using the curb on the inside, much like Oliver Wedden is doing up ahead of us, just to try and minimise that track distance, which is obviously key in these rental karts all the time. And once again, just going through the chicane, missing the apex a little bit there, and unfortunately just where we're aquaplaning, we do dip 1 or 2 tyres onto the rumble strips on the outside, which you are going to see is going to come back to haunt us later in the race. Now, coming through the first couple of corners, once again, I did understand pretty quickly that we were being pressured from behind by Matthew Hill, who has pretty much given us a nudge and then bolted into the distance. And this is where I began to understand that there were a little bit of difference in obviously my weight. I'm a bit heavier, but even despite getting a better run out of the corner here and just coming down into the next section of the track, he really does bolt away very quickly, doing a very robust move on Oliver Wedden up ahead, just sort of charging down his inside. I try and sort of secure that position, but Oliver Wedden is able to sort of sneak up our inside and take that position back. You can see him a little bit frustrated with that one. Back down into 5th place, and didn't really want to hang around too much, as I thought Matt Hill would be able to keep up with him and follow him along. So we do go for a little bit of a robust move here, going into this corner. Hands up, it wasn't the best move ever, a little bit of contact, so I do apologise for that one. But we do move ourselves up into 4th position. Didn't want to be hanging around in this one too much. Obviously that move wasn't the best, but it was one that I thought we had to make to not be caught behind him for too long. So once again, you can see we're now getting pressured by Callum, who is behind us, all over us into the chicane section of the track, the last little bit. And this sort of unsettled me through the last corner. Again, we're just sort of aquaplaning off onto the edge of the track on the rumble strips, which is not really where we wanted to be. And if you did notice at the top of the gantry, as he went past the start finish sort of straight, we did in fact receive a warning for track limits. So this is something that I did have it in the back of my mind. I wasn't entirely sure where it was at this point in the race, so I was just trying to take it a little bit steadier this time, not absolutely abusing the curbs as I was more on the first lap. Instead was just trying to take it a little bit steadier. You can see through here, obviously I was taking as much of the curbs as I could because I knew that everyone else was using this area of the track. And again, coming down into a nice little downhill section of the track, which I didn't really expect. Obviously a lot of times I've seen Whilton, it's been on camera, and the camera doesn't really capture the undulating sort of nature of the track, and obviously you are going up and down through different elevation changes throughout the whole of this lap, which, as I said, on camera doesn't really capture. But it was really fun to experience when we're at the track. I have absolutely nothing bad to say about the track. Really enjoyable day. Looking over our shoulder, once again we have got Callum behind us, who is beginning to put us under a little bit of pressure. So as I mentioned earlier, just decided to miss that curb on this occasion, as I thought this was the one that was sort of getting me in a little bit of trouble. Again, coming through the last couple of corners, once again just trying to use all this chicane curb, as it really does set you up nicely for the run out onto the start finish straight. You can see once again we do dip a tyre into the rumble strip. It wasn't very bad, but again on the gantry we have received another warning for track limits, which at this point I was really getting a bit frustrated and confused about, as I didn't really understand where this was coming from. And on top of this, Callum absolutely bolts past us. You can see I'm trying to deploy some human DRS, getting a little bit frustrated, as I knew at this point there was absolutely nothing we could do. Despite taking what I thought were better conventional wet racing lines, you can see we get a better X out of the corner. In the second phase of when the karts were accelerating, Callum just sort of teleports away, and there's not really a lot we can do at this point. So instead decide to try and sit behind him. Unfortunately we completely messed this corner up, going all over the curb on the outside. We do manage to keep it on track. You can see I'm getting a little bit more frustrated with myself, as there wasn't too much I was really able to do. I wasn't driving the best on this lap. I think I was just getting a little bit frustrated to see how quickly Callum flew past us, but trying to tag onto the back of him here. We're trying to do what we can to keep up with him, but you can see he's absolutely bolted into the distance, much like the drivers in first, second and third have done. So not too much we can do at this point. I did feel like a bit of a sitting duck. Again, we do take a nice tight line through the second or final section of the track, just trying to minimise that track distance in these tricky conditions. Obviously the car is sliding around all over the place, not really turning in the way that I want it to. And again, coming through the last corner, we do once more dip a final rear tyre over the rumble strips, and I believe that this is where the downfall in the race sort of came from. Now obviously I wouldn't say anywhere else on track we've necessarily abused the track limits, but you will see what happens as we come around for the end of this lap. So once again, I can see behind us now at this point we do have Toby McAllister Brown, who is looking a little bit racy as well. So I tried to take a little bit more of a defensive line going up the start-finish straight, sticking to the outside once again as there was a better drive coming around that section of the track around Christmas corner, and again just taking a nice tight line down into this downhill section of the track. Again, we're just trying to figure out where the grip is on the track. I decided to try and take a bit of a tighter line this time rather than taking a more conventional line, as the track was drying out. There wasn't any downpour of rain during our race. You can see bit by bit the track evolution is showing. There are dry lines appearing, but it's really difficult to try and find where those areas of the track are. Again, you can see we're taking a bit of a tighter line once more, coming into that longer left-hander, and now we are attempting to really try and push the car as much as we can to maybe try and catch up with Callum, who is ahead of us. Once more, we take all the curb on the inside there on the left-hand side, just to try and minimise that track distance, as I've mentioned so many times already. But as we come through the final chicane here, this is where disaster sort of struck. You can see here we haven't used the rumble strips on this occasion, and as we look up, there's not really too much we can do as we see the black flag sign appearing. And genuinely at this point I was quite miffed with what was going on. I was quite annoyed, so I did let Toby pass. I thought, well, there's no point really racing him because I'm going to be coming into the pits anyway, so I sort of let him pass through the first couple of corners. And at this point I was quite pissed off, if I'm honest with you. There wasn't really too much I could do. I hadn't really understood where I'd taken track limits. I didn't really see anyone else that was doing pretty much the same as me getting penalised for it. So I was a bit upset with this, but we're coming around on this lap now. I know that we've got to come into the pitch. You can see how annoyed I'm getting from the aggression I'm sort of giving to the steering wheel. Again, trundling a little bit wide all over the curbs there on the right-hander, and again coming into this corner. We're just getting this line all wrong every single corner, every single lap at the moment. Unfortunately, again, we go deep into the corner to try and find the grip. We sort of get the acceleration out of it quite well, which I was really happy with, but obviously I knew at this point, I'm looking over my shoulder, there's no one really behind us, but I knew that we did have to come into the pits to sort of serve a penalty. So we hold our hand up here, trundle into the pits, and I didn't want to come zooming in because I don't want to get into any more trouble. And you can see here we're just leaking positions left and right now, and there's just not too much we could do at this situation. Never really been black flagged from an outdoor competition apart from at Buckmore for SRK last year. So with this in mind, we're just going to leave you guys with what was said in the pits.
Well, I've got a black flag. You didn't get a black flag? I've got a black flag. It said on there 17 fucking black flag. Are you fucking serious?
Track limits, that's where it was.
Yeah, but where? Do you know where?
On the last run off. No, can't touch the rumble
With my temper tantrum done and dusted, we then moved on to the rest of the race here, where we were essentially trundling around until we had this little bit of fun into Christmas corner, trying to take a little bit too much a more conventional racing line, and we instead slipped out. Now, we did later on in the race catch up to James Bracey here, who unfortunately for him just looked like he was in a kart that was extremely down on power on the straights, and you're going to see this coming into the next couple of corners and across the start finish line. We caught up to him, and I thought we were sort of challenging for position here. You can see the track is now starting to dry out, and you can see we're right up behind him, and we almost breezed past him as if he's not there on the straight. Now, I am a big human being. I'm not a light human being. James Bracey is unweighted, and we just sort of sail past him and then look over our shoulder and realise we've absolutely gapped him without realising he's there. So it's really unlucky for him on the day to get a kart that was a little bit slower. And this is also the same for Mr. Cosmin, who is up ahead of us as well. He's sort of driving around. I was really trying to push to catch up with him, thinking that I was making it a couple of positions back in this race, but little did I know both him and James were in fact being lapped, which after I found this out after the race, I was a little bit disappointed, as I thought I was having a nice little race with these two and really pushing myself to get back up and claim a couple of points myself. But once again, down the straight, you can see I thought he was pretty much letting us pass and half throttling at the time, but he genuinely wasn't. That was just the speed of his car, which is a little bit disappointing to see. I know that if I was in that position, I really would probably got quite frustrated. But you can see here through the next couple of corners, the track has dried out now. We're still using a version of the line just to break offline, just to ensure the kart slows down correctly. And we look over our shoulder and actually in bewilderment because he just was nowhere near us. So we skip forward here. essentially to the end of the race, our last lap, which was in fact our fastest lap of the race. So just going to ride on board with this one because the track was drying out now, and you can see we're really throwing the car in through the rest of the corners. Now, little did I know that the group of drivers up ahead of us, we were actually battling for position. So let's see if we're able to catch them by the end of the lap, by just really trying to take a bit more of a conventional racing line. So you can see here through Christmas Corner, really throwing the car in, getting the back end out and getting on the power early, as this is a part of the track where you really want to carry as much momentum through as possible. Again, we're slightly breaking offline as the track wasn't completely dry, and you can see we're trying to use the curb on exit. Again, we're deploying a little bit of human DRS, trying to urge ourselves forward. The corner was essentially flat out, using all the track on exit, not going over the curb though, because the car did have a tendency to bottom out, which we didn't want to do. Again, coming into the last couple of corners into the boot here, we're really trying to chuck the car in, get onto the curb, try and use as much of the track as possible. Again, once more, just trying to carry that momentum through the boot and into the chicane at the end, using all the chicane, almost taking off, and we come up to the final bit of the start-finish line, but unfortunately we were a little bit too far behind, coming across the line with a 1:06.206, which was the 4th fastest lap of the day. So really happy with this, but unfortunately there wasn't really much more we could do. So this does in fact bring us to the end of the race, and obviously from this 15th place finish we do drop down to 10th place in the standings in the championship. I'm going to leave them up on the screen now, heading into the last round at Rye House, which is next month. However, this does in fact bring us to the end of the video, guys, so I hope you have all enjoyed this one. If you have, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. I really enjoyed this day at Whilton Mill, obviously a track we'd never been to, but I did really enjoy it. I did have a bit of a laugh making fun of the track and what happened on the day, but absolutely no disrespect to any of the marshals or staff members at the track. I really enjoyed it and had a lot of fun despite this. I thought the track was great, I thought the car I had was great, I couldn't have too many complaints on that side of things. We don't have too many official events coming up very soon, but we do have the BIKC National Final coming up, and also the final round of the Club 73 Weekend Series for 2024 as well. So I hope you guys stick around to look forward to that. I'm also going to try and do a couple more things leading into the end of the year. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.